Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
I don't think I've ever had to put my foot down on a set in a way that I had to on Wednesday. Everything that she does, everything that I had to play, did not make sense for her character at all.
Jenna Ortega did a podcast talking about Wednesday and the script changes she had to make. And there was very different takes from it across the internet, because as you can see, even from the original article, or at least you would be able to see that if I'd set it up correctly, even the headline is phrased how I became unprofessional, not how I fixed the script and saved the entire show. Talking about how she had to put her foot down. First assumed that the series would be a lot darker, and realised over time that the script was so out of character that things desperately had to be changed just to stick to the source material.
Being in a love triangle made no sense. There was a line about like a dress that she has to wear for a school dance, and she said, "Oh my god, I love it. Oh, I can't believe I said that. I literally hate myself." And I had to go, no.
And boy, did the media class come out and despise this thing. Wednesday Star's rude comments should kill her career, but they won't. I don't know, maybe that's because she's actually got talent, love. Nor was it just the corporate press, when the producer himself came out and started blasting her as entitled and toxic, saying that she should know how things work. In other words, know your place and shut your mouth. Before continuing, she should also ask herself how she would feel if the showrunners gave an interview and talked about how difficult she was and refused to perform the material. This is a guy complaining about how she talked about her problems publicly, and so went on Twitter and talked about his problems publicly. And at no point does he say her specific examples are wrong, because they're great examples. No, instead his complaint is, in this business, it's extremely bad form to throw your collaborators under the creative bus. He's not saying what she said wasn't true. He's just upset that he told everybody about it. Reality doesn't matter to him. It's all about the perception of the public to his work personally. And the thing is, I think we've seen this story before. Everyone knows about Witcher and Henry Cavill. He wanted The Witcher to be as true to the lore as possible. Well, the writers actually hated the source material and were actively mocking it at times. This led to him wanting to change some scenes, killing the horse as a joke when actually he considered it to be a major deal. And if you got the lore wrong, he would call you on it. People would think you were difficult. Why? Because you're disagreeing with them. That makes you difficult to them, but it doesn't mean that you're not in the right. And the audience doesn't care about how large the ego of the writers are. What they want is the best entertainment. What they want is the actual character that it's meant to be, which is what Jenna Ortega seems like she was aiming for. Now, the producer that complained about him, he does have quite a large bank of work. I like a lot of these shows. Daredevil, Spartacus, Smallville, Angel, all series that I like. Dollhouse Season 2, thinking back on it, probably a little bit weird, but I enjoyed it at the time. But that doesn't change the fact that Wednesday shouldn't be in a love triangle, and it does make no sense. Making Wednesday talk about how much she loves a dress just to make a joke out of it doesn't fit in with the character either, something which she vetoed.
There was times on that set where I even became almost unprofessional in a sense where I just started changing lines.
Based economy.
And while normally if some actors did this, I'd have a problem with it, because generally they do it around ego, with Jenna Ortega it seems to be genuinely the opposite. It is far more like Henry Cavill caring about the lore, where she'd actually sit down with the script supervisors and the writers, and they'd be like, well, what happened to this scene? No, we're not doing that, because I just can't do those things. And the thing is, she knows it's unprofessional. She knows that this could actually damage her career, but she still did it anyway because she wanted to stick to the source material and the character. She accepted the show in the first place because she assumed the series would be a lot darker. It's only when she read the scripts and realized, oh, actually, this is, well, it's a tone meant for a younger audience. From lines like, oh, I love it, oh, I can't believe I said that, I literally hate myself. It's coming across as Marvel humor. And if there's one thing we could do with less of in the world, it's Marvel humor. Largely because it's not humorous. No, instead with Jenna Ortega, it doesn't seem to be done around ego at all. In fact, very much the opposite. Because normally she'd go home from work and think, that scene felt good today, but on Wednesday, there wasn't a scene where I went home and felt that should be fine. She doesn't think of a Wednesday as her proudest moment internally, and it adds an extra level of insecurity and stress. I want to live up to people's expectations, which is something I need to get over, but I'm also scared that, I don't know, maybe someone will get to know me too well and realize I'm not all that. This was far from the confident, arrogant, full of themselves actor that you'd normally get. Someone that thinks they're doing art, and that it's them that people go to see, rather than the source material or the entertainment they're creating. No, this is far from your arrogant, egotistical, self-entitled Hollywood actress, and they hated her for it, because that is exactly how they interpreted it. The producer said, I just love talking about the actors, about their lines and stories, but they don't have the full picture, you see. They don't know where the story's going, and why these lines are actually needed for it to make sense. These actors just don't know what they're talking about. They don't have the full picture. They can't comprehend the art of it like I can. They actually see someone caring about the source material as a problem because it gets in the way of what they want. This is how you can end up with someone saying, I became almost unprofessional. And yet it doesn't actually mean they were in the wrong. If they were making changes to preserve the source material, to preserve the character, and make the best entertainment possible, then it doesn't really matter if you're being unprofessional actually talking to someone above you. It'll probably come across in an industry as unprofessional to confront your boss and say they're wrong. But if they are wrong, then it's still your duty to do it if you want to provide the best product possible for the customer. And it definitely seems like her changes to the series did just that. Would it not just get to season 2, but until March 5th, has been in Netflix top 10 most watched for nearly 4 months. Is Netflix's third largest show of all time, second largest English speaking, because the first is unsurprisingly Squid Game, as it was awesome. And Wednesday got great reviews almost across the board. This is from IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, 86% audience score. And Jenna was personally responsible for some of the most viral moments of the entire show, with it being her dance, which she choreographed herself, which not only produced the photos, which have now been used all over the place, but the dance itself went viral with loads of people imitating it, to the point where I know about it, and I'm not interested in that thing at all. The amount of free marketing that dance did for the show is astronomical, and yet here we are, slating the actress solely responsible for it, all because she dared actually talk about what she did on the show. These are things that happened, changes she made. Are you upset that she actually said them publicly? Or are you upset that her comments mean that you can no longer take credit for it? Because it just so happens that the changes she made are some of the most well-known for the entire show, and that means that everybody knows that you didn't do them. Why do you feel like she threw you under the creative bus? Why do you think it's bad form to talk about script changes that you made, which actually improve the script? Is it because life's too short to deal with people like her in the industry? Or is it because it takes the spotlight off you and helps boost her career rather than yours? Because quite frankly, I'm not sure how angry you should be when she helped you make a show which just broke records, had a record-breaking debut week, and then it just kept on going. Going from 341 million hours on November 29th to 752 million by December 6th. And even after 15 weeks, it was still adding another 16.5 million hours a week to its record. So now it's well over 1 billion hours. And yet to you, it's a problem that she's just so young, she doesn't know any better. Life's too short to deal with people like her. Why can't she just shut up and do as she's told? And if she does make a good change, then why can't she keep her mouth shut about it to the audience so that I can take all of the credit and the limelight for the changes that she is responsible for with her talent? And for that, people actually wanted to kill her entire career. I mean, just look at the elitist, snooty tone which the New York Post writes this entire article in, because this was amazing. What makes Jenna Ortega think she can publicly trash her employer and get away with it? She wasn't trashing anyone. She was saying, I'm insecure, I'm not confident in this thing, and I had to make changes because it didn't fit with the lore and the character. She wanted to improve it, and yet they think this says something about the punishment-free, cowering in terror, you do you, be well world we live in. And the stupid thing is, I'd actually agree with that statement, just not in this situation. You'd actually written something that stuck to the source material, was actually the character, and she came in, refused to do it, and changed it all. Maybe she just refused to say something that was an integral part of the character, like booyah or something. Maybe you would have had a point. If the show hadn't been a massive success, maybe you would have had a point. Instead, you're actually trying to criticize someone who actively set about improving the work. And that's the only thing the audience cares about. They don't care about your fighting backstage. What they care about is they get a Wednesday show that feels as if it's part of the Addams family. And you can argue about whether they actually achieved that or not, but whatever happened, they did achieve it enough to be a big success. And with me, I don't think my personal opinion about whether I like something or not actually matters. If something is incredibly popular, it has value, because it is the people which actually give something value in the first place. It's the audience's demands, their weight of opinion that gives an IP value, whether you personally share in that opinion or not. The fact that it means so much to so many people is what gives it its inherent value and why it should be preserved that way. So I wouldn't say that Wednesday actually does live in a punishment-free, cowering in terror, you do you world. Because if people didn't like it, if her changes were wrong, then nobody would have watched the show and there would have been punishments. Largely by not getting a second series for one. But of course the author can't see that. Ortega wasn't teary-eyed apology tour atoning for her sins. They literally want her doing interviews, crying and complaining, and throwing herself on their mercy for the fact that she improved the script. No, she was extolling her rotten behavior as a virtue, because it was. Because the only thing she wanted was to stick to the source material. You can try and write it off as, Jenna, you're in a mediocre Addams Family spin-off that's best known for a flailing arms dance on TikTok. Nothing about it makes sense, except for the fact that it's the third largest show Netflix has ever had. This is someone who's so egotistical, they can't see past their own nose. And just because they don't appreciate for what it is, doesn't mean that it doesn't have value, because so many other people do. When the writers are saying to you, wait, what happened to the scene, you have crossed an obvious line and are no longer doing your job. And I would actually say that as the main character of a show, you're doing exactly your job. Why? Because you know how your character should act. If someone goes up to Bond and starts asking him to act like an emotional wreck, then obviously he shouldn't do it, because you're destroying the character. And yet, that's not what Daniel Craig did. He just shut his mouth and went right along doing it, before giving interviews about how he hated the franchise. Oh, I can't tell. I wonder why you didn't bother about the character and them destroying James Bond. It's because you didn't like what you were doing and you didn't care. You just wanted the pay packet. And yet that's not what Jenna Ortega was doing. She actually cared about the script, which is why she cared enough to actually put her job on the line, to the point where she knew she was acting unprofessional, and yet still did it anyway because she felt like it needed to be done. And the proof is in the pudding, because it worked. And yet it just gets trashed by the corporate media, talking about egotistical nonsense, how you're just being difficult, and how clearly it means I'm amazing, everybody else around me sucks, when that's not actually what Jenna said at all. Saying that I want to live up to people's expectations, and maybe someone will get to know me too well and realize that I'm actually not all that, is the exact opposite of egotistical. I don't know if you've met many egotistical people, but they don't generally go around talking about their extra levels of insecurity. And yet they continue to give other examples from producers and creators like, I don't put up with bullshit or nasty people. I don't have time for it. Rhymes was not suffering any fools or divas. But many in the industry are only too happy to put up with Ortega because, insanely, the actress has been made an executive producer on the second season of Wednesday. Maybe, just maybe, it's because she knows what she's talking about, and we have proof of that. By a series that broke records. If you write something that's awful, and someone comes along and improves it, maybe you should just accept the help, rather than you becoming the diva about it. Because it's definitely the creators which are a diva in this scenario. That's why he had to come out and clarify the statement about being entitled and toxic. It was never about her creative concerns. They were all valid. Or a performance. That was fantastic as well. No, instead it was just about breaking the trust that we had on set. I didn't mind her saying it on the set. I just didn't like that she said it on a podcast out there, because I didn't want people to know exactly how horrible the scripts we originally wrote was. No, she's an amazing talent. This is just an unfortunate situation to expose creative differences publicly. And I'll also admit, the writers were on edge because of an impending strike, myself included. It was a perfect storm. I can't believe I made those comments about her. I was so stressed. I regret all of it. I just wrote it in a moment of anger. Yes. Or did someone phone you up and go, you can't say this about somebody that's making your entire show? They came out and spoke out how they improved the script, and then you attacked them personally for it. Who do you think comes off worst in that scenario? Who comes across as the fool or the diva? Or did someone phone you and say, we're not going to put up with any of that bush or nasty people? This is a situation far from your boss discovering you sitting in an office chair shouting orders at your peers and then going, you're absolutely right, you're in charge now. The thing is, what if you are? This isn't exactly an unusual situation. I've seen military films where the guy in charge panics, and so his second in command takes over, fills in for him, because something needs to be done. Something needs to fix this train wreck. Just because you're in charge doesn't mean you know the best way to go about it. And if you've got someone behind you who is actually improving your work, you should accept their improvements and suggestions. And this isn't even uncommon. If you go and watch a Tim the Tatman video, the editors and the way it's editing actually improve what his original stream was. And he's just a producer. He's not the author of the source material. So it's not like she's arguing with anyone who has more right to the IP or knows more about the IP than she does. She just wants to stick to the actual lore. That's why this article goes, yeah, well, his producer, he's got credits on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So obviously he must know more than Ortega. And that's why they think it's right that he came out on Twitter and started calling someone entitled and toxic just because they spoke the factual reality of what they did on the show. So his diva behavior may not be new in Hollywood, Broadway, or opera. That's not what this was. And yet it's exactly what they tried to spin it as. They did the same with Henry Cavill, saying he was problematic and troubling, and how him actually coming up with the law, it just got in the way of the production process. Why? Because it got in the way of them doing what they want, their vision, rather than what was best for the audience and for the IP. To the arrogant and the egotistical, there is no one more problematic than somebody that actually wants to stick to the source material. And they will come out with any amount of spin, any amount of hate, even try to kill your career just because you want it to actually be good. Likening Jenna's behavior of going, I don't think we should do a flash dance in the Wednesday show, to somebody angrily hurling objects at members of the crew, because those two things are just alike. Obviously, I can see why you compared them. And going so far as to say that to proclaim that your co-workers stink is tantamount to treason, a crime which throughout most of history carried the death sentence, I might add, and saying that it's her co-workers which are responsible for the breakout role that saved you from video game voiceovers. Except, as I've already shown, she was responsible for a significant number of the changes, which actually produced most of the marketing for it. That is why she's celebrated rather than criticized for her ungrateful comments, because what she did was improve the show. What she did was fix the problems that they were making, and in fact she already wasn't happy with it already. She did what she could to improve it. But imagine what she could have done if they'd actually allowed her to change more of it. If her changes helped you make some of the most iconic moments of your show which is the third largest on Netflix, then imagine what you could have made if she'd actually produced a show she was actually happy with, rather than insecure about. Because this is a person who comes across as far from arrogant, and far from somebody who's living in a consequence-free lunatics running the asylum 2023. Because we might agree about the state of the world in 2023, but we are entirely on opposite sides as to who's responsible for it. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe. More videos like this in the future. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.